This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
The aftermath of every social revolution brings about change. Cultural norms and landmarks shift as our minds and hearts expand beyond the familiar. To everything, there is a season and a time to every purpose in the land of the living. This is our time to renew, revive, and restore the hope lost to the busyness of life. This is our time to dig again and rebuild from the storms of our past on a solid footing that holds. Welcome to The Foundation.
The Foundation.
The Foundation with Hart Grant is brought to you by Alive, Commonwealth Bank, Davinia Grill Foods, J.S. Johnson, Mobile Garage Technologies, and Wendy's.
The Foundation. Foundation. The Foundation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. 96.9 FM radio. Howard Grant in your company, The Foundation, on this absolutely beautiful Tuesday, March 7th. A day away, sort of a stone throw away from being able to have sort of a recognition for International Women's Day. And I see that we're having more and more conversations about women's suffrage, maybe in the spirit of what we're going towards as it relates to independence, and really being able to look back over these 50 years and find out what have we done, where not we've kind of gone awry, gone off course. Do we do more things like this? I enjoy the conversations. I'm looking forward to being able to have that with you tomorrow, and I'm really kind of chomp it down with you tomorrow, Wednesday, March 8th, which is International Women's Day. But today, we're going to perpetuate and kind of expand the conversation that we started last week, right? We started to have this kind of a conversation last week to talk about our constitutional position. Friday, which was supposed to be a laid-back Friday, talk to me. This is wild, right? Friday was supposed to be a laid-back Friday. The thing is I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't sleep. We would have gotten a call last week, midweek. I forget which specific day it was. But since then, I've been doing a lot of reading, right? And that sort of call that came through was from Professor. You guys know him as Professor. We affectionately call him Professor. Sidney MacArthur Walter Thompson, all the way from Fort Fincastle, being able to speak to us about the Constitution. Now, over the years, we've always heard him. We've always heard him advocate for that and speak up on behalf of the Constitution. Now, just in retrospect, just in hindsight, just with the knowledge that we have as a society, as a people now, I wanted to kind of dissect the Constitution and what was being laid out for us and really find out whether or not those words still hold truth and significant social value for where we are today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start the show off like this. Before we do any of those things, let me see if I can do this. Make sure that you pick up your Guardian newspaper. The FNM MP says that let ministers speak. Lewis says that party leadership being undemocratic, right? This is wild. This is wild. Do we go into more conversations about the Free National Movement? Is this by design? Is it by design that you want to be able to put more information in the papers? Not the papers. The papers have a responsibility to carry. We have the responsibility to carry the news that's socially. But are you creating this sort of mischief in your organization just for it to be able to lead in the headlines, to have a conversation about the relevance of your organization, as opposed to being able to rectify some of the issues inside? Hey, anyway, that's not a conversation for today. But this is wild. This has been almost 2 weeks now that we've been having this conversation about an internal issue within the organization that cannot seem to be rectified, and we continue to be able to put a label of democracy at its forefront, the banner of democracy, overarching like a rainbow over the organization, to say that this is democratic. The lack of organization is democracy. Well, we got to talk about things like that. I suppose we could leave something like this for Friday to be able to dive into that conversation to do that. But before we do anything else, I need to introduce you to that. I need to introduce you to my guest today. Now, I've heard him over the years. We've had significant conversations, and I've always been I marveled at his grasp and off-the-cuff articulation and sort of recollection of what exists within the Constitution. On my phone is 111 pages. 111 pages of the Constitution of the Bahamas right now. And, Sidney MacArthur Walter Thompson can be able to tell you what article is this, what article speaks to that. And so I asked him, I said, how long have you been sort of advocating for this socially, this kind of an idea to apply ourselves to the writings of the Constitution and embodying it to see our society moving in a particular direction? He said from its inception, from 73. I want to talk about that today. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to none other than Professor Sidney MacArthur Walter Thompson. My brother, it is so wonderful to have you with us today. He's joining us by telephone. How are things with you today?
Well, things are very well with me, and good afternoon, Brother Grant, and good afternoon to the Bahamian people. Let me just say that all of those things that occurred, those constitutions we would have had or changes prior to July the 10th, 1973, we were under a colony, the British colony, the Bahama Islands. The thing is that July the 10th, 1973, made us a nation, a sovereign, independent, democratic state. Now, there are a lot of people who have some difficulty with that. That's the first article, Article 1. And all that was prior to that is now null and void. The only thing that is valid today was valid from July the 10th, 1973, and even now as I speak to today and going on into the future, is the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, which began 12 a.m. July the 10th, 1973. Now, you could look at all those other things from an historical point of view. That's no problem with that. But the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Bahamas is supreme. Any other law, all of these things you see the government has signed, these agreements on this and that and the next thing, must be examined in light of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. International law, U.S. law, British law, all kind of law.
I see we dive right into the thing, and I love it. I appreciate it. But just know that we're going to contrast that with information that we have access to here and now. Now, Britannica, I want to read this for you. I want you to go with me. Britannica, you guys can check it out, Britannica.com, starts to speak to the independence of the Bahamas. And its first paragraph sort of surmises our position as we look at independence. Let's read it. It says, politically, Bahamians have had considerable control over their affairs since the first assembly in 1729. In May 1963, watch me, in May 1963, a conference was held in London to consider a new constitution for the islands. It was then agreed that the colony should have full internal self-governance, the governor retaining reserved powers only for foreign affairs, defense, and internal security. The new constitution came into force on January 7th, 1964, and constitutional advances in 1969 brought the country to the verge of complete self-governance. This has nothing to do with black people. This has nothing to do with the majority that we fought for, the majority that ruled at the time. This has nothing to do with the women's suffrage movement. This is not why Burma Road Riot existed. I still contend that self-governance or interdependence and independence are two things that has a gulf between it. Now, the Constitution that we continue to be able to cheer and rally behind is a Constitution that was not designed for who we are when you look in the mirror. Talk to me about it.
Now, you're talking about the Constitution of 1973.
The Constitution has not changed. They had made maybe a few changes since 64 to 69 when it came to 73, the few changes that they made retained power within the government and gave you these options and concepts that you didn't have to pledge your allegiance to these, so they get an option in those particular senses. But the Constitution that was written and read to the Bahamian people didn't really change from 1964.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that aspect of it, because, see, you must understand, 64, 68, whatever, we were still a colony.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the British people were running things.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until, see, the vast difference occurred July the 9th, colony. July the 10th, independent nation. That's where the difference comes in, Mr. Grant.
But that's only in theory.
That's what?
That's only in theory. Theoretically.
What do you mean theory? What are you talking about?
July the 9th, in theory, based upon the etches of history and based upon these proclamations, can say to you that there is a change from a colony to an independent state on the next day. But in truth, because that's what I want to deal with today, I don't want to deal with the manipulation of facts. I don't want to deal with the perpetually bending and shape-shifting of the facts. I want to deal with the truth. In truth, this Constitution that we rally behind was not designed for the true independence and liberty of the black man. It was not designed for who we are.
Hold the point right there.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you telling me, or are you saying to the Bahamian people, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, which came into effect July 10th, 1973, was not designed for the Bahamian people? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It was designed for the colony, the same concept that existed in 1964 when it was initially written, that when it was read into the hearing of the Bahamian people, there wasn't significant modifications made to identify the aspirations, passions, ideas, creativity of the black man that exists today.
So,
it
Mr.
doesn't
Grant,
speak to who we are.
Me all that work that was done, the green paper, the white paper, the discussions with the church, the discussions with the people of this country prior to
this was all done under
the election of 1972. You're saying all of that?
All that work
anything?
that was done. Watch me.
The hard work of our parents, the hard work of the founding fathers, are you undermining all of that based on what somebody else tells you?
No, the same what somebody else tell me, because I'm only going by the history that was written. And I'm saying to you, by the same people who write the Constitution of the Bahamas. The same people who write the Constitution of the Bahamas
are the same people. Let me make sure I
people.
understand you clearly now, because you seem to be a little mixed up.
Okay.
Are you saying to me the masses of the Commonwealth of Bahamas had nothing to do with the Constitution of 1973? Is that what you're telling me? Somebody just wrote some things on one piece of paper, handed it over to Mr. Pindling and said, that's your Constitution? Is that what you're saying to the people of this country?
Let's go back in. The Britannica.com states, politically, Bahamians have had considerable control over their affairs since its first assembly in 1729. 1729 colony. In May of 1963, a conference was held in London to consider a new constitution for the island. May of 1963, we were still a colony. It was then agreed that the colony should have full internal self-governance, the governor retaining reserved powers only for foreign affairs, defense, and internal security. The new constitution came into force in January 7th, 1964, when we were still a colony. All of this was designed strategically to be able to retain the power that existed within the oligarchs, that existed within the power structure that is here. Now talk to me. The only question that I have is the perpetuation of an idea that devoids me as a black man, that actually separates me from the idea of being able to attain true sense of leadership in here, because it was not designed for me. It was not designed for me. There is not the true sense of integration that exists here. There was only a very clear segregation and social, everyone plays nice with each other. I just want to have a very clear conversation. This is not me trying to pull it down. I'm only saying, is there time, is it now, that we look back into history and say we need to make modifications for the next 50 years of this country? We've gotten to the Jubilee. We've gotten to this place where we can be able to celebrate over the past 50 years. Hindsight being 2020, we've seen no true sense of growth. We've seen glorified managers, for the most part, in leadership positions. You yourself continue to be able to talk about the fact that our leaders have not committed themselves to the Constitution. But my question to you is that even if we had every single leader commit themselves to the Constitution of the Bahamas, would we see the type of liberty, the type of access and opportunity for Bahamian blacks that we envision? Or would we get much of the exact same thing because the Constitution wasn't designed for the empowerment of who we are? Talk to me about it.
Mr. Grant, let me just put it this way, okay? The thing is that the leaders of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, you must also understand that the Bahamian people, generally speaking, were not knowledgeable about this new constitution, of the independent constitution of 1973. I do not agree that we were handed something by some other people and say, that's what you are to work with. I disagree with that totally.
Why?
You know why I disagree?
If all the history books telling me that, the same thing.
Yeah, but say you are undermining the work of the Founding Fathers, that's one. You're undermining the work of the black masses in the islands of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Oh, now
a lot of things went down, Mr. Grant.
No, I can accept that, but I want you to be able to really, let's say Howard Naive now, as a young boy. Let's call Howard Naive. Howard don't know. He's a young boy. He's a little buck. Little boy, listen, that's fine. I can take that. Watch me. Explain to me, what do you mean by founding fathers? Who are these founding fathers?
The founding fathers are the founding fathers of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, those who went to the conference for the independence movement.
Okay. So
your founding fathers. You don't recognize them as the founding fathers?
No.
The Commonwealth of the Bahamas?
I just need to know, you're saying to me the work that the founding fathers would have done.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I just want to...
The work of the founding fathers who went to London to deal with his independence constitution. There's a lot of work that went down. Even the church was involved in it. Mm-hmm. The average citizens were involved in it. We had the election in September of 1972. Mm-hmm. September the 19th, I remember that date very well.
Mm-hmm. Now...
So it seems to me as if you are undermining the work of the mothers and fathers, the blood, sweat, and tears that they made for us to enjoy what we have today. I have a serious problem with that.
Okay, that's okay. We could talk it through.
Okay?
Let's talk it through.
But the thing is, you're entitled to your view and your opinion. I'm not knocking that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have to be upfront and honest with the Bahamian people.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that those persons, let me make this very clear, those persons who were given the responsibility to govern the Commonwealth of the Bahamas as of July the 10th, 1973, made a lot of mistakes. They had their own ideas. The people who voted them in, the Bahamian people, expected much out of them. Mm-hmm. They expected them to look after their affairs. Mm-hmm. But of course, we could see what history has shown, what has happened. The people themselves were not familiar with the concept. Even today, 50 years later, people are just beginning to wake up. And I'm happy to see this awareness by the average Bahamian who asks a lot of questions on these talk shows and ain't getting no answers to nothing. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that. In fact, as I speak to you now, and as I listen to the shows, there is mass misinformation on the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas from so-called educated people talking foolishness and nonsense.
Okay. Now...
That's not helping the Bahamian people.
Professor.
Yeah.
I would like to contend.
No, you're fading out.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay.
Turn me
that's
up a
it.
little taste. I would like to contend with you because I enjoy these things. I just want you to know that. I here for this. I love this. I would like to contend that the knowledge that you pursued and the relentless ingesting of this document and your allegiance to this document over the years doesn't make the pursuit of knowledge outside of this document null and void. Talk to me. What I mean by that is that your pursuit in trying to identify, to embody, and to see this Constitution expressed specifically socially doesn't negate the truth that others have found in other realms. You are saying to me that the history books, all of them I read all over the internet, I told you I call all the libraries to find out whether or not there was significant modifications made to this Constitution that was given to Bahamian people. You see, I believe that there is a convoluted conversation here. I believe that there is something happening here between the ages. I know that traditionals have a commitment to being able to take what you're given. Here, this is what it is, and you accept those things. But the next generation seeks to find out more information. I would like to stand on this belief that I have. This is belief that I have. The Bahamian people fought for majority rule. The Bahamian people have done that. The PLP that was formed 70 years ago was formed as a result of what was already happening on the ground. They took advantage of the wave that existed, the energy that was charged in the environment, the atmosphere. Globally, people understood that this was the time for us to take our independence. And so the PLP, identifying those things, jumped on that. And they benefited significantly, continue to, as right now. But when we start to have a conversation about Constitution, if you read the history books, the monarch was in trouble. And they had identified with all its territories that there was a desire to exit. And as a result of that, they've created something in that space, which is called the Commonwealth of Nations, initially called the British Commonwealth of Nations.
Yeah.
And in creating the British Commonwealth of Nations, persons didn't have to pledge allegiance directly to the monarchy. Their allegiance was that we will not bow and your heir to your heirs and successor, but we will commit ourselves to the Commonwealth of Nations, which in turn is the exact same thing. Now watch me. There are 14, and all this is documented information. I told you I ain't sleep. There are 14 realms, what they call constitutional realms, that the monarch still holds, that pledges allegiance to it. And the Bahamas is a part of the 14. The self-governance that we have, that we call independence, has not changed anything. It was not designed, and listen, fight me, ladies and gentlemen, give us a call, 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259, or hit us up, 422-4796. This, for the liberty that we seek, the liberty that we see, the democracy that we as a nation, as a people, continue to be able to agitate and speak of, does not exist in this space from a constitutional standpoint. Constitutionally, we as a people are still trapped with this trapping to the monarchy. And so when this administration more specifically came in and there was a conversation about becoming a republic and the rejection thereof, we see other nations, such as Barbados, identify the importance of being able to have true independence and taking on this position. My question to you is, why reject the idea of true independence and continue to embody this idea of self-governance?
Let me put it to you this way. See, a lot of us get mixed up with what other people are saying, in other people's affairs, in other people's places, instead of looking at what we ought to be doing as a people. Our Constitution is the supreme law, not the law of Barbados, not the law of Canada or any other place. And it's unfortunate that we take such a dim view of our own things. I have a problem with that with our people. Not because some people who had the authority to govern your country, the mistakes, the errors, and I'll even go further, national sins that were committed, which were never repented of, because they never admit to nothing. We undermine what we have as a people, and we are still, quote unquote, internal, but we don't have no responsibility for our external affairs. You see, Mr. Grant, you're going to have other people who would write your story for you from their perspective. I lived through this. Okay? My parents lived through this. Others in this country lived it here in the Bahamas. They didn't. So I'm not going to allow anyone to come and tell me what happened because I was here.
Professor,
Yes,
with
sir.
the greatest degree of respect, whilst I'm so grateful to have a conversation with you and others who would have been a part of this transformation in the country, I really am. I love to sit down with you guys and really have a conversation. But the fact of the matter is that you're not going to be here always. And if you yourself, who would have experienced these things and others, did not write this down in the annals of time and history for me to ingest it, or my children's children to ingest it in due time and due season, then we could only live off the words that exist on paper to speak about the history that we have. See, because what lives in your heart and in your spirit and your mind that you speak of with passion as your time draws nigh and your eyes get a little dim and your voice loses its strength, I can only rely on what's written. And you know that. And so to
You only
say
could
to
rely
me,
on what you said?
I only could rely on what has been written to speak to me about the history.
By who? Written by who?
I don't know.
Yeah, but see, this is the problem, Mr. Grant. We're going to have other people write our own story instead of us writing it ourselves. We have had some Bahamians who wrote about independence, you know. But we don't pay attention to what those who were here, who went through it, lived it, wrote about it. We want to listen to some strangers, some foreigners, some aliens, some outsiders who have their own view. Didn't live here, didn't participate in anything, but they're writing. So they'll write anything as it seems to them from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But we need our own people here to preserve. See what has happened over the last 50 years? We should be writing that. Because a lot of mistakes were made in the governance of our people. And you must also understand that the vast majority of the Bahamian people depended upon their legislators to lead them in the right way. They trusted them. They relied on them.
I can say something to you that is going to be extremely taboo. Based upon this history that I'm reading, whilst a great deal of the forefathers, the framers of the independence that we have, they were strategically in position, and we know that a great deal of them had ideas, creativity, they had power, they had strength, they had articulation, but truthfully, they were lazy. This, what we're seeing right now, was given to them. They were ushered in by a fight by the Bahamian people. And whilst I'm saying to you, you only proven my point. They didn't take the time to write the history for me to know. It's a white man history. I tell you, I'm reading this Britannica.com. I read National Geographic's Britannica.com. This is the history that the world identifies for the Bahamas. And no one here can say contrary. Because if it's not written and ingested by the Bahamian people, then we can only say this is the history that exists. You got to let me take this commercial break. I got to take this commercial break. Guys, please be a part of the conversation. 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259. Hit me up on the text line 422-4796. We're talking with none other than Professor Sidney MacArthur Walter Thompson, and we're talking Constitution today. Ladies and gentlemen, please be a part of the conversation. We'll be right back after this.
Foundation.
The Foundation. We'll be back right after this.
The foundation. The foundation. The foundation. The foundation.
On your march.
Carifta is almost here, and Alive has partnered with TCL for you to capture gold at the 2023 Carifta Games. Switch to Alive and get a free TCL 30 Plus or TCL 30 SE on select Alive postpaid plans to share pictures and videos of our Bahamian athletes as they hit the tracks to win gold. Visit your nearest Alive store or mobile van location and come gold with us at the 2023 Carifta Games.
Whether your business is in-store, on the go, or both, let Fidelity work with you to maximize your customers' payment options with a fixed or mobile terminal so that you never miss a sale. It's safer than cash and more convenient so that you can take your business anywhere. For details, contact a business development officer today at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport, or visit our website at fidelitygroup.com.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Foundation. Foundation. The foundation. The foundation. 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 The foundation. The foundation. The foundation. The foundation.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, 96.9 FM radio, Howard Brandon, your company. So happy that you're with us today. This is a foundation. We're chopping it down, and we're having what I believe to be a very good conversation. Rather provocative, to shake some of the concepts and ideas that you've been building on and held near and dear to your heart. To see a next generation kind of dissected like this, I know that it may be difficult, but I don't do so with ill intent. I just need clarity and understanding. That's all. That's all. You just gotta understand that at my vantage point and position, my age, this generational, this position at 40. I'm 41 now, I'm gonna be 42. The aspirations and ideas that I had as a child, even leading up to independence for my nation, as an individual, what I can be able to achieve based upon the words that have been spoken to me by my teachers, by preachers, by my parents, by family members, by friends. The ideas that we seek to embody and become in this country have gone, and we can't even see those things. We can't even realize that, and that is why we turn from one way to another, having conversations about maybe it's because of the Haitians. Oh, it ain't the Haitians? It's because of jobs. It's because of politics. And we keep shifting to try and find out at which inflection point have we gone contrary to the ideas that were spilt in our minds and spirit when the Union Jack fell and the Bahamian flag rose? We can't find it. And so we go on with living every day. And we continue to be able to identify, or maybe that's the problem, or maybe that's the problem, or maybe that's the problem. But I contend, historically, that the problem is none of those things. The problem is the design at the foundation. Maybe, whilst there's majority rule at the forefront, with hue, facial recognition, and familiarity, the architectural structure was not designed for us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking with none other than Sidney MacArthur, Walter Thompson, and we're really being able to have a very good conversation today. I can bring it back on. Brother Thompson, you with me?
I heard everything that you said.
Okay.
Now, I will not characterize the founding fathers of this country as being lazy.
Okay. Why?
That is your personal view, and you're entitled to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the founding fathers of the Commonwealth of Bahamas were courageous men and women.
They needed to be.
Okay?
They were forced to be so because of an insatiable desire by society that says we need strong men, alpha women with courageous intent to stand up.
That may be so. I'm not disputing that.
Okay.
It may very well be, but it was done nevertheless. Have you read the book, The Faith That Moved the Mountain?
Yes.
By Sir Randall Fox?
Yes.
You have any observations on that? Sir Randall was one of those in the movement.
Sir Randall...
And some others wrote too. Now, I would agree that a lot of things, what was going on prior to July 10, 1970, we don't have those notes from the Founding Fathers.
Okay.
That is true. I'm not disputing that. But
Okay.
the fact is we have to go by what we have. We have people who are still living today.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had some people who wrote some things.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution is the best thing that we have. It tells us what type of nation we should be. It tells us what we need to do to guarantee our freedom. I don't know why I'd be talking all this other stuff. Some very specific, clear-cut things defined in your preamble. And you're going to tell me we ain't know what we're supposed to be doing, or we're running from this point to that point, simply because, Mr. Grant, you've had persons who have had the opportunity to govern the country,
Mm-hmm.
didn't do what they ought to have done according to the outline in the Constitution itself.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about national commitments of some specific things in order to preserve your freedom. I think there's about 6 or 7 of them in there. But have we been doing that? Have you heard any government speak to that? From July the 10th, 1973 up to now? I've been watching them all this time, you know. What has happened, Mr. Grant, is people who have had the opportunity to govern this country have been writing some things on scraps of paper.
Professor,
They told the people this
everybody
is
else
what we're
can be
going to
wrong,
do.
and you're right. Professor, everybody else cannot be wrong, and you are right.
Mr. Grant, listen to me carefully.
Well, let me hear it.
Listen to me carefully. I'm going by what the Constitution says.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to listen to those others who wrote from their own perspective. They didn't live this, whoever they may be, who you said you meant to. You're going to find that people have said some things about this country that are not true. But they aiming to was swallow it up, but they wouldn't listen to Sir Randall. They wouldn't listen to Sir Clement Maynard. They wouldn't listen to Dame Doris Johnson. She wrote a book too, The Quiet Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Do we talk about those things?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to despise our own writers, our own leaders, even though they made mistakes? The people in the United States government made mistakes too.
You see,
Do you see the Americans despise them?
one thing that we in the conversation, and I don't want to take away from the independent individuals who sought to be able to ascribe themselves to the principle that exists in Habakkuk 2 and 2, the idea of writing the vision and making it plain, that the next generation that sees it can run with it, with the spirit of it. So I'm not going to take that away from the individuals, but we know constitutionally, we know from a political standpoint that collective responsibility is where you see production, productivity, and movement. And from a collective standpoint, despite the one or two which are the exception to the rule, if the rule collectively is say that the body of men and women here didn't take the time to ascribe this, to put this down, I only could go based upon what I have access to. I want to take a telephone call. Caller on the line with us live.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. And good afternoon to your guest.
Good afternoon.
Like you were saying about what you read concerning a part of our history, and he is saying why listen to persons who wrote down. Do you know where I am at today? There may be no cloud in the sky that I can see, but where you are, you may see cloud. Mm-hmm. So I am writing from my perspective, mm-hmm. from what I saw, mm-hmm. from what I lived through. Mm-hmm. You understand? I understand the Constitution, and I like the way the gentleman live his life by what the Constitution is saying. However, we have to realize that people have different perspective from the angle that they are living. Mm-hmm. So the information that you read give you from that person's perspective does not make it wrong. It made it what that person lived through. Now, what he saw might have been something else. So for us to know that, then he now has to write a book from his angle. So then, in the middle, we will find, where some of the information may align and some may not. But it does not make one part right and one part wrong. We have to live our life to understand that everybody sees things from their own perspective. And those who wrote it down, they wrote it because they want us to know what they live by. Mm-hmm. Now, those who did not write it, how did they expect us to know anything about what they lived through?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ma'am, let me say this to you. What is most important is the Constitution itself, okay?
Understandable.
Supreme law. Listen to me carefully now, because you got some people talking all kind of crappy talk around here. The point is, that is what we have. That is the supreme law of the land. Do Bahamians respect that as being supreme? Or they're going to take the ideas, the perspective of somebody else, which is not law, has nothing to do with law, is not anywhere supreme, because the Constitution is supreme. You're going to downgrade your own supreme law to what somebody else is saying from their particular perspective? Is that the way we're going to build a country?
No, but why are you looking at it as downgrade? If I read
the point is,
the Constitution of the United States of America was
specific.
Yeah, but the first thing they wrote, did not wrote anything against the Constitution. Like I say, they wrote according to what they lived through.
You talking about persons who didn't live this experience, okay? They're writing from their perspective. I don't need that. I lived it myself.
They lived it also. They just live it from a different angle that you lived it from.
No, but the point is, I am saying
that it's always good to have an open mind.
No, you need to have an open mind.
I do.
We ain't got to run. Call, I appreciate your telephone call. Thank you so very kindly. Thank you so much for your contribution. Go ahead.
The Constitution is supreme. Okay? If we were to run this country based on that Constitution, and it says very clearly what we have to do in order to preserve our freedoms.
But
why are we not doing that?
But listen, I don't want you to believe that this is downplaying, a downgrading, or dimming a view. Let me get it out. Okay, I don't want you to believe that this is downgrading or diminishing in any way the Constitution of the Bahamas. You see, my only point is that I can't downgrade or diminish the Constitution of the United States of America. That's the Constitution that was designed for the people that exist in those particular spaces. My point to you is that the Constitution of the Bahamas, that we, who are the majority blacks in this country, we yield our strength and commit ourselves to a Constitution that was designed not for us post-73. We were given that. And whilst we continue to perpetuate this idea that this is the supremacy that exists, it doesn't reflect
but then
the opportunity for me to be able to grow.
Given to us. I don't agree with that at all.
But that is what everything has said. Everything that I've read has said that.
See, when you, Mr. Grant, that's where the problem comes into place. When you tell me...
I only 41. I only could do. They teach me how to read. They taught me how to read the English language.
Misinformation. When you tell me that something was given to us, we were just sitting down on one chair somewhere, and the fella come and say, "This is what you're supposed to do." That's being disrespectful to the founding fathers. That's being disrespectful to the mothers and fathers who struggle hard to get us where we are today in 2023.
Okay.
That's the problem. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with some of us in this country today. We always believe that something outside is better than our own people. And that's very disgusting. Mm-hmm. We shaft our own people, the work, the hard work that they put into building this country. And someone comes with a different perspective, and they have a right to their perspective. But we have the Constitution, which is very specific, very clear, very precise, tells us what we need to do, a nation under the supremacy of God. Here are some specific things you have to do in order to preserve your freedom. We ignore that. Mm. Why are we ignoring it? Because of some perspective of somebody else? So Grant, that doesn't make any sense.
I want to talk about that when we get back. Because, I want to talk about that.
I'm on your show to deal strictly with the Constitution. I don't give a hang about any perspective from anybody else.
Okay, but that's okay. My question to you is this. For the years that you've been actually, and we have to go to a quick commercial break and do the news and get back, right? But I want to talk to you about this because you have to understand this generation seeks clarity. We're not just going to be able to this generation seeks clarity. We need to know why we're making this decision, why we're committing ourselves to these particular things, and dissecting those things. That's all. I mean, it may seem disrespectful.
Let me just say this before you go to break, if I may. The Constitution of the Commonwealth of Bahamas. This is the biggest problem we have made in 50 years. We didn't teach our Constitution to our people. So I can understand younger people feeling the way they feel. That's not a problem for me. But we have to have persons who know it, who understand it, who lived it, who experienced it. And we have the document right there, what they wrote.
But I don't want you to believe that, and guys, we have to take a quick commercial break and get back. I don't want you to believe that scrutiny means rejection or diminishing. Scrutiny Grant, and the pursuit of information
can be, Mr. Grant, the Constitution can be scrutinized.
Okay, so let me scrutinize it.
But that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I am saying to you, while people are asking questions on these talk shows, you have persons who are giving a lot misinformation from so-called educated persons. And I said to you that since 1973, the Constitution says specifically, here are certain things you need to do to preserve your freedom. Are we doing those things? It talks about a national commitment to some very specific thing. Do you hear the current administration talking about that? Did you hear the Christie administration talking about that? Did you hear the Ingham administration talking about that? Come on, Mr. Grant. The record is there to speak for itself.
And I'm telling you, I read the records. So let's be able to take this quick commercial break and get right back. Guys, 96.9 FM radio, Howard Grant and your company, The Foundation. I got a lot of texts here. Howard, why you bring the man on the show? Why invite a guest on your show and then not let him speak? The professor is trying to explain the Constitution that you clearly do not understand. Well, let's talk about it. Let's take this quick commercial break. We're going to take a quick commercial break, get to news, and get back to the show. We'll be right back after this.
The Foundation.
The Foundation. We'll be back right after this.
The Foundation.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
Guardian Radio and the Foundation are on the move.
Bahamas, this one's for you.
SBT, Small Business Thursdays. Every Thursday, the Foundation with Howard Grant will highlight small businesses throughout the country, far and wide. Your products, services, prices, and personality. We want to hear it all. Get your 30 or 60-second advertisement heard on air at a fraction of the cost. We here at the Foundation understand the times and don't want you to be left behind. With Guardian Radio, you reach your specific demographic and it is unmatched.
We reach thousands daily.
Get your products off the shelf and your services in their hearts. Small Business Thursdays with the Foundation, only on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. For more information, call 302-2300 or the Help Me Howard line at 827-0111. SBT, Small Business Thursdays. Get your business moving today.
With so much going on in the world today, only accepting cash at your business can be risky. Let Fidelity offer you and your customers safety, convenience, and the flexibility of a fixed or mobile terminal. Take it with you, on the move and on the go, because business should never stop. For more details, speak to one of our business development officers at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport. Visit our website at fidelitygroup.com or visit us at any of our branches.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Foundation. Foundation. The foundation. The foundation. 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 The foundation.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, 96.9 FM radio. Howard Grant and your company, the Foundation, here on Guardian Radio 96.9, having a very good conversation with none other than Professor Sidney MacArthur Walter Thompson about the Constitution of the Bahamas. And I want to read a few texts before we get into anything and kind of dive into it, right? So it says, good afternoon, Mr. Grant. The Prime Minister apologized to the Guardian. Okay, this is contrary to our stuff, but that's information in the paper right now. The Prime Minister apologized to the Guardian about these particular positions. He took a position last week on, misinformation that the Guardian had given, and now he apologizes. So you can pick up your Guardian newspaper and be able to read that and see exactly what's what. It says, Howard, you're right. They have handed documents to manage the Bahamas, not lead it. They didn't shed no real blood, sweat, nor tears for freedom. They were given it. This is information. This is just some text that's actually coming through. Let's see if we can read another one. It says, Mr. Grant, I'm loving your topic, research, and argument today. As I understand it, we may have been given our independence as opposed to us fighting for it. Makes me wonder if we were even given the opportunity to opine in it before we had it or signed to it. It says, it's read a couple of these things. It says, Howard, you are downgrading and diminishing the Bahamas Constitution, and why don't you let the professor talk? It says, why invite a cast on your show and then never let them speak? He is trying to explain the Constitution, and you're trying to confuse it. Why invite your guest on the show and never let him speak? Howard, you're not listening to an elderly man that lived through things that you know nothing about. But it seems that your mind is already made up about the Constitution and how you want to feel about it. You see, I've been married 20 years now, and I could never win an argument with my wife, right? Though I tried. Let me tell you, I really try, right? Because, as a young person, my mother and father, or my grandfather and my grandmother argue. And I always see my father and my grandfather lose the argument. They kind of bow out gracefully. And I say, boy, when I get married, I ain't gonna lose, right? And so I take on this kind of a position to try to, with facts and figures, lay out with logic before my wife why she is not right. But as soon as she spills into an area where she feels I could never win that argument, when she starts, well, I feel like I could never, I give up at that time, and I realize in retrospect why my grandfather and my father bowed out. Because you cannot win an argument where a person's wrapped up in feelings. This conversation that we're having today has nothing to do with my feelings. Has everything to do with the documentation that I've read, ingested, and I want to be able to get clarity from. Now, historically in this country, we, especially as children growing up, were to take what we were given and accept it as truth. That's what it is. Never given us an explanation. In fact, many of us out here would remember if you ask Grammy something, your mommy something, and you asked them for an explanation, the explanation many times would have been, because I said so. My point is that the Constitution of the Bahamas, even now as I try to dissect it and find out whether or not this can be one of the issues that we have that doesn't speak to the empowerment of the black man as we move forward. Even now, as we have this conversation, the traditionalists are saying to me, because the Constitution says so. And my point, that has nothing to do with feelings, is that it is not a good enough answer for me. And I believe that a great deal of young persons share in those sentiments. Because the Constitution says so, is not a good enough answer for us that are going through socioeconomic issues, tribulations, that has seen a significant separation from community, that has had a significant diminishing of hope in the idea thereof. All of these things that fueled our economy and fueled the spirits of the Bahamian man when the Union Jack fell and the Bahamian flag rose, have left us. And if it hasn't left entirely, the residue is so small that it's almost insignificant. It's minute. And so this has nothing to do with Howard Grant's feeling. This has everything to do with Howard's 40, my daughter's 15, my son's 17, my little baby boy is 4, and my baby 8 months. When they start to do research, they're going to find the exact same thing that I am. And they're going to come to the same conclusion. And the conclusion is, has this ever really been our country designed for us? We're sitting with Professor, he's kind of chiming in with us today, and I'm so happy that he's here. Professor Sidney MacArthur, Walter Thompson, in conversation today. I thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, my brother.
Yes, I listen to you very carefully. And people have their views. The Constitution allows for freedom of expression, you know. Freedom to impart ideas and opinions without interference. The Constitution didn't say it has to be right, you know. It could be dead wrong. So you have all these varying views and this and that and the next thing. That's a part of the Constitution. It allows for that. Now let's get right down to the nitty-gritty as to what we should be doing as a people, as a nation. That is also spelled out in your Constitution. I'm not negating the fact that people should not question anything. Say, I don't have to accept the nonsense from persons who never went through the experience I went through, never lived in the Bahamas, but they're writing from a different perspective. I have something better than that. I lived it, participated in it, was here when we had the green paper, was here when we had the white paper, was here and participated in the election of September the 19th, 1972, when the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and that was the first time 18-year-olds voted. See, even the young people were involved in it. Some of them don't even know that. Because we never taught to them, Mr. Grant. The biggest mistake we made as an independent nation is not to explain in simple, basic, fundamental language this very same document that we're supposed to be working with as a nation. That was important. So the thing is, it tells us specifically some things we ought to do. I don't hear any administration in this country talk about those very specific things from a national perspective that ought to be taught to the Bahamian people to say, listen, these are the things we ought to be doing. Young people were never taught that. What they got was some nonsense written on scraps of paper from some other people, which is not constitutional. No wonder why the people are so confused. And then the lady's going to come on talking about this perspective and that perspective, while people have a right to their view. The Constitution is supreme, not their view. Their view could be dead wrong. Even the court could be dead wrong. The judge could be dead wrong. The government of the Bahamas can be dead wrong. The Constitution of the Commonwealth is never, ever wrong. It is always right.
Let me ask you this question. I got a text that says, Howard, ask the professor if he believes that the Constitution is a living document, and if it can, and if it is, can amendments be made over the period of time to cater to the majority needs?
That's a good question that that person asked. It's a living document. It's been living from July the 10th, 1973. Amendments can be made to the document. That's in the document too. As to what amendment. Now, of course, we had an amendment with the Attorney General. Amendments can be made to the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas over the last 50 years. Basically, none were done except the one with the Attorney General. But they didn't have to come to the people in that particular instance, because a lot of people questioned me on that. I said, no, they could do that. That's constitutional. I would agree that before we can make amendments to this document, we need to understand what it says. The Bahamian people don't even know what's in the document. Now, I am glad because of 4 specific events that occurred in this place that the Bahamian people are now turning to the Constitution and questioning the Constitution, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But they have seen that what some people was giving them was not working. Even now, as I speak to you, it ain't working. So I can understand the frustration, because I was on the show yesterday, and I couldn't get very far because of the load of questions that were being asked just about property. And we got stuck on that the whole show, 2 hours just on property. If people had questions, I don't blame them for asking questions.
But why do you think they ask the questions, Professor?
Because they don't understand, Mr. Grant.
I don't think it has to do with understanding.
No, you're wrong. You're dead wrong.
Okay, let me explain to you why.
You're completely wrong,
Let me
Mr.
tell you
Grant.
why. The pursuit of information has nothing to do with the fact that we're ignorant in these areas.
Mr. Grant, I'm not saying the people are ignorant.
Watch me.
You use that word.
Yeah, ignorant is just a lack of information.
No. I don't use that word, period.
Okay. Well,
I don't use the word ignorant on the Bahamian people.
Okay.
That's offensive.
But that is what you're saying. The embodiment of the conversation. The embodiment. Professor, listen.
Professor Thompson never said that.
Professor, the embodiment of your conversation saying that the Bahamian people do not understand or they don't know is a show of ignorance. We don't know. That's just ignorance.
Listen to me carefully.
In its definition.
It is true that the Bahamian people, by hardcore evidence over the last 50 years, the leaders who were elected never taught them the Constitution. Never. Okay? That's why we're all mixed up about national issues. That's why we're all in confusion. Because we were getting things written on scraps of paper from different personalities instead of using the supreme law of the land to govern the country properly. Mr. Grant, it is true. I am delighted that some things occurred, 4 things which occurred, which caused this heightened interest in the Constitution. And that is a good thing. People want to learn, people want to know. And that's understandable. But I'm not going to say they're ignorant.
Let me ask you this question. How long you had your house?
Pardon?
How long did you have your house, the house that you live in right now, that you purchased? How long did you have
It's been
that?
a long time.
Give me some years. Give me decades. No, I'm serious. I just was trying to make a point to you.
Okay, go ahead and make the point there.
Okay, let's say you had your house for 45 years.
Yeah.
Let's call it 45 years. Over the past 45 years, some significant things have changed in this country.
Yes.
Even, let's go 50. Over the past 50 years, some significant things have changed in this country.
Yes.
The introduction of independence, the shifting socially to the empowerment of the Bahamian black man and black woman, the opportunity to access areas that have been capped off, kind of closed off from us for a very long time, and giving us access to those things, some fundamental words, some fundamental ideas have shifted in the families.
Yeah.
Now, our grandmothers would say, pursue independence, pursue an opportunity, find ownership. So that has been transferred. So the change has come over the past 50 years. And as a result of this, every single generation, the two generations that exist over the past 50 years, me being one of them, have been told you got to own something in your country. Watch me. You got to own a piece of the rock. This is where the issue is, and this is why you had a 2-hour conversation on land ownership. As we pursue these things, and prices continue to rise, and our governments continue to be able to genuflect to external entities and world powers to ensure that they can accommodate them, and they shift their language to ensure that it's a softer tone externally, but internally never yielding us property opportunity to be able to access these things. We always go back to 1992, 1993, right? And where the Removable Properties Act, and everybody keeps being able to bang on former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham. And every administration had an opportunity to make modifications to it. Every administration had an opportunity to be able to empower and make some things happen. They didn't do it. Now we are at an inflection. We are at a breaking point socially. And we look at every aspect to say that we, as citizens of the country, do not have an opportunity to access and own anything. My God, we are working day in and day out, paying these people to live and exist in a country where the government has nothing but crown land available to them. And we, as young people, got to have our 5, 6, 7 children pile up in a 1-bedroom apartment and cannot live. We need to find out a way to be able to get true sense of independence, access and opportunity, empowerment for black Bahamian men. And that is why you will have a 2-hour conversation about those things. Because the Constitution means nothing to us if we cannot live in the independence that we speak of.
Mr. Grant, you're missing the point entirely. See, when I spoke yesterday about property, what they failed to understand was you have a right to property. That's in the Constitution. And I said that to the people. It's not that you don't have it. It's there. It's in the document. They just don't see it. What was the fact is you have personalities, and this ties in right in what you were saying, where they have taken it upon themselves to violate your rights as citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. See, that's a whole different horse of a different color. It doesn't mean you don't have the right to the property, you know. It is just that you have a system in place that moves so slowly for law-abiding citizenry to get a resolution on something that is theirs legally, lawfully, constitutionally.
Wow.
The problem is not the Constitution, you know. It's the personalities who are to be in charge, who were given
and the
personalities to run your affairs.
The personalities, when stepping into office, makes an oath, takes an oath, and pledges their allegiance to the monarch.
So what's wrong with that?
Okay, let me take a telephone call because
what's wrong with that, Mr.
No,
Grant?
I didn't say nothing wrong with it. I'm saying to you,
the Constitution.
Okay, you only keep going back to my point, Professor.
No. My
point is that this is not for the empowerment of the Bahamian people.
You're missing the point entirely.
If the Bahamian people commit themselves to voting for Susie Q or Martin X in their particular position and affording them an opportunity to represent a constituency, a body of people in the House of Assembly, the allegiance should be placed on the people that gave you that opportunity.
Mr. Grant, let me tell you something, okay? We are under the monarchy. We are a constitutional monarchy. We are a sovereign, independent, democratic state. That's in the document. Okay?
That is a contradiction.
That's what?
That's a contradiction.
No, there's no contradiction.
That is a contradiction.
Listen to
what you say. Listen to what you say. Let me give you another term. That's a contradiction. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why it's a contradiction. My wife pledges allegiance to me. We married each other. But there's an external entity that she had a prior relationship with that she still commits to. How is this a marriage, a marital bond that cannot be broken internally if there is an external entity that we're still connected to? There's no sovereignty and allegiance here.
Mr. Grant.
The sovereignty and allegiance is to the monarch.
What's that again?
The sovereignty and allegiance is to the monarchy. It's not to the Bahamian people.
That's in the Constitution, Mr. Grant. So you're saying we should not pledge allegiance or majesty to the Queen? Oh, well, now...
That's all this conversation is about. The conversation is about whether or not the Constitution serves us going forward.
Oh, yes, it does.
Okay.
In fact, when you examine the articles in that Constitution, you'll find that the Founding Fathers were way ahead of their time. Way ahead of their time. But you see, the problem is we listen to them other fellas out there writing their own funny
But you keep saying the other fellas. Who are these other fellas that you speak of specifically?
Those who are giving misinformation to the Bahamian people, which doesn't line up with the people of this country, because they're thinking differently from what we ought to be doing here and having our people so confused.
Wow.
And your leaders who were elected to serve the people, not carrying out their responsibilities as they ought to according to the Constitution, because nothing... Hello, can you hear me?
I'm right here, Professor.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Nothing prevents a representative for a given constituency not to represent the interests of those people. That's what your Constitution says he ought to be doing. Article 52.1. That's not happening, Mr. Grant.
Okay.
That's not happening. And it says three specific things in Article 52.1. It certainly ain't happened in my constituency. I can tell you that. Here is another thing that we have to understand.
Okay. Can I take a telephone call before we get into that?
Okay, go ahead.
Let me take a telephone call. Is this a caller on the line? Okay, let me take this caller. Caller on the line with us live. Go ahead. Is the caller still there? Guys, please give us a call, 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259. Hit us up on the text, 422-4796. There's a caller on the line right here. Caller on the line with us live. Go ahead. Hello? Hello, caller. Go ahead.
Yes. There seems to be a disconnect, and I don't know if it's intentional between you and the professor. I think and correct me if I'm misunderstanding. You're saying that during the independence process in 1973, they were using an old document that was created in 1963 or 64.
A modified document that incorporated there was a few amendments made to that document and presented for 1973.
Presented for 10 years later.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That is your point.
That's my point.
The central point that you're trying to make. And the professor is saying that it doesn't matter. It's what we have in our hearts and our heads. And I agree with you that the people with the things in their hearts and their heads, when they pass off the scene, all we would have is what is written. And what is written is what is written. And so I think the professor needs to, he's got some good points, but he's got to look at it from a modern perspective, that those corrections should be made, or the whole thing scrapped and redone. I mean, a constitution is a living document. It's been, the constitution of most countries, or if not all, have been modified incessantly over the period over their lifespan. So we seem to have a document that we think is sacrosanct, and and I love what the Barbadians did, because I believe that the Commonwealth was simply a clever means of continuing colonialism.
Man, talk to me.
And people they were so, infused with the idea of independence, in brackets, that they didn't really look at what is written, So they had one intention and one set of expectations, whereas the writers of those documents, I understand they were standard documents written, and most of the countries that got them, right? I understand there are two documents.
They got the same document.
Yes.
It's the same document.
Everybody got written by these guys, and I believe the wickedness of it was simply to continue a version of the monarchy and colonialism.
But you don't have to believe that. That is what is written. That is what history says. History says they came together collectively, internally within the monarch, and decided that Commonwealth realms and territories should do this.
And I don't know why we think that the idea of the British people who write these things had any noble intent. I mean, look at what they've done to Africa. They sat and created the Versailles Treaty, which basically divvied up Africans, with the Africans not even knowing that their futures would be decided back, in Europe. And so I don't know why we are so gung-ho that these guys got our interest. These guys write these things for their own benefit, and I think it boils down to that, where we need to look at our Constitution right now. We need major constitutional amendments. If not, and so I think that is where and when God forbid, when good people like the professor disappears, we're gonna, the people who are left gonna be left to fight these things out.
That's it.
And we need to take advantage with his knowledge.
Yes.
With his knowledge, he needs to impart it while he is still able to.
Yes. I appreciate your telephone call, my brother. Thank you so much for your contribution. Go ahead, Professor.
No, well, the caller has some points. I'm not knocking some of the points that he's saying, but you see, sometimes in this kind of conversation, we get carried away with what some other people are doing. He mentioned about Barbados. This is a major weakness with us as a people. We have to look at ourselves. Say, for example, the constituency of Centerville. Centerville has many areas in it which are very unique. We have never, as a people, dealt with those unique areas in that particular constituency. Fort St. Castle is totally different from Mason's Addition. Mason's Addition is totally different from Sunlight Village and Sunlight Cottage. We got one big church right in there. A monument for our time. We've never, ever looked at these areas. See, this is our problem. We're not looking at ourselves closely and saying, what is it we can do to improve the lives of our people? So what has happened, Mr. Grant, is that we take something that some people are doing outside. We don't know what else they were doing. We just grab it up and say that could work in the Bahamas. But that is utter nonsense and foolishness. Now, he talked about what some people sat down and wrote. Well, I'm not even going to get into that aspect of it. But I'm saying that the Constitution could have been changed if the people wanted to change it. We have to look at the fact is that is what it is. Now, it could be changed, but the people have to understand what it is they need to change to. I've heard them talking about going to republic. What is that? What is a republic? I can't get a clear answer from anybody as to what is a republic. We need to look at our own Constitution, look at the conditions in our own country, examine the record of 50 years of those persons who were given the authority to govern the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Did they govern according to the Constitution? Because if they were governing according to the Constitution, we wouldn't have the crap we have today. We wouldn't have it. But the point is, yes, I agree with the gentleman that it needs to be taught. Maybe there are some things that need to be changed, but you're going to confuse the people about trying to change a document that they know nothing about. That has been the major weakness of the government of the Bahamas. The government of the Bahamas has abdicated its responsibility to protect the national interest of the Bahamian people by not teaching them the most valuable document in the country, which is the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Bahamas. It just never happened, Mr. Grant.
I am, I'm enjoying this conversation so much today. You have no idea. I'm getting a lot of texts that persons want to be able to, and I think that these kind of engaging conversations about where we are should give us this kind of a perspective of trying to identify where we're headed from here. I think for far too long, we as a people have accepted a certain position and did our very best. We did our very best to make that work. We have been the proverbial MacGyvers as it relates to this independence concept. We made what we were given work the best we can. And the only question I have today is whether or not, it doesn't have to be scrapping the Constitution entirely. If we've come to a conclusion and a position that this is a living document, the question is from this point, what amendments can we make to strengthen our position, to empower us, and truly find ourselves to an opportunity that we can say that we're independent, that we own a piece of the rock, that access and opportunity to education, to employment, and the like is given to Bahamians first. We're having these conversations that is devoid of the Constitution socially right now, trying to figure out how do we accommodate what is being said to us from the Commonwealth of Nations, from CARICOM, from the UN, and every place else as it relates to an internal issue with illegal migrants. So much so that we've modified our position and not even call it illegal. It's just irregular.
I heard that.
Let's shoot straight with the thing. Constitutionally, we see it saying one thing, but we modify our position, shapeshift, to be able to genuflect to what people saying externally.
Mr. Grant, that's your leaders who have done that.
Wow. I got to take this commercial break.
Now, the Bahamian people could do something about that, because the Constitution tells you what to deal with that. But the point is, no, that is a major problem. But I think people need to know and understand what it is that we have in this document. And then they can decide how they want to go about changing the Constitution. But I think it's too early for that. At this stage,
after 50 years?
It's too early for that. We got to take some time to know this document, to understand it, because it's our supreme law.
After 50 years, this proverbial marriage.
After 50 years, it is still the supreme law.
It's too early after 50 years in this proverbial marriage to be able to scrutinize it to find out if we could strengthen it going forward.
Mr. Grant,
we should do more in terms of finding out.
We haven't scrutinized or strengthened anything. We have allowed those who were given the responsibility to run our national affairs to run amok. That's the real issue. We don't understand the difference between party representation and parliamentary representation, which are clearly spelled out in the Constitution. So the fellow sitting in the House, he says he's a party representative, parliamentary representative. So what do you expect? Then you got the people on the outside who are the constituents. They got the same mindset what he got.
Wow.
So how do you expect them to change anything?
Wow.
Because they don't know the Constitution. That's why they don't understand the power that they have in their hands. I keep hearing people talking about
hold up. Just hold that right there. Hold that thought. I want you to be able to come back. I got to take this quick commercial break. Ladies and gentlemen, I see the lines are lit up. The texts are lit up. Let's talk, man. 96.9 FM radio. Howard Grant and your company, The Foundation. Let's take this quick commercial break and be right back after this.
The Foundation. The Foundation. Foundation.
whether your business is in-store, on the go, or both. Let Fidelity work with you to maximize your customers' payment options with a fixed or mobile terminal so that you never miss a sale. It's safer than cash and more convenient so that you can take your business anywhere. For details, contact a business development officer today at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport, or visit our website at fidelitygroup.com.
The Grand Bahama News is available every Tuesday in the Nassau Guardian. Buy your local paper at Freeport convenience stores, Western Bakery, DeGregory's Fine Foods, and Bellevue Gifts. Want to reach your Grand Bahama customers? Then call Barefoot Marketing at 827-4578 or message them for ad rates via their Facebook page. Advertising opportunities now include classified ads too. Keep up with all the latest Grand Bahama news in the Nassau Guardian newspaper every Tuesday.
Carifta is almost here, and Alive has partnered with TCL for you to capture gold at the 2023 Carifta Games. Switch to Alive and get a free TCL 30 Plus or TCL 30 SE on select Alive postpaid plans to share pictures and videos of our Bahamian athletes as they hit the tracks to win gold. Visit your nearest Alive store or mobile van location and come gold with us at the 2023 Carifta Games.
At Wendy's, we are different. We don't just use beef. It's fresh, never frozen. Our burgers are square because we never cut corners. Served hot off the grill with fresh lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and American cheese. We believe in fast food done right. Always serving fresh, never frozen beef. Order a hot, juicy Dave single, double, or triple. Made with fresh, never frozen beef. Now only at Wendy's. Different inside and out.
With so much going on in the world today, only accepting cash at your business can be risky. Let Fidelity offer you and your customers safety, convenience, and the flexibility of a fixed or mobile terminal. Take it with you, on the move and on the go, because business should never stop. For more details, speak to one of our business development officers at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport. Visit our website at fidelitygroup.com or visit us at any of our branches.
Foundation. Foundation. The foundation. The foundation.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, 96.9 FM radio, Howard Grant and your company, The Foundation, having a conversation today about the Constitution and really trying to find out whether or not the document is a document, though it's a living document. Is it a document that actually speaks to some of the hopes, dreams, aspiration, and progression of where we need to go forward? We're talking very good with Professor Sidney McArthur Walter Thompson, and he's really chopping it down about the importance of the Constitution and thereof. I made an argument, and the text is kind of torn, and even the calls are kind of torn, and I just feel like there is a social tearing. You know, the veil has been split. The gulf exists between the traditional thinking that accepted the Constitution as a part of who we are and the progressive, no political pun intended, the progressive young Bahamians moving forward into the future, being able to scrutinize this document. And that's all this is, right? Let me just read a couple of these texts before we can be able to move forward. There's a lot of persons text me. It says, good afternoon. I think the show highlights our needs to civic education in our schools. The fact that so many people don't understand the importance and the gravity of the Constitution is scary, to say the absolute least. All right? It says, good afternoon. I think that the show, we read that. Great show as usual. Tell the professor, calling people grassroots is insulting. Calling people ignorant is being real. Right? There's the next text that comes through. It says, the gentleman is a robot. No disrespect intended. I don't want you to be disrespectful. I just want to be able to have a very clear conversation about where we are. It says, Howard, you're right. There was handed a document to manage the Bahamas. We read that already. This constitution was a gift written by the monarch for their house Negroes to manage the monarch external assets. Don't forget, most politicians and even Pinland was educated by the same oppressors who gave us the 1973 Constitution. They didn't give us a 1973 Constitution. Let's be very clear about this. Let's clear about this. The 1964 Constitution is what we got. Okay? They didn't give us a 1970. That's when the modifications were made. So let's see if we can be able to read this. It says, so we should just amend our constitution to suit foreigners so that they can get citizenship and have absolutely no rights as Bahamians. I think this is what we call a slippery slope. Wild. That is not what we're seeing here. That is wild. Let's take a telephone call. Professor, I see that you're there. Let me see if I can get one or two persons in here.
That's fine.
Okay, go ahead. Telephone call.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Grant.
Hey, good afternoon, my brother. What's up?
And good afternoon to the professor.
Hey, good afternoon.
You know, the thing is, I want to get this in because nobody seems to be mentioning this, and so I rather listen to him than talk. So I'm going to get this in. Like the Constitution from England, right? I want you to juxtapose it with our own as far as is there any dissimilarities, and then also, as we know of our neighbors to the north, their Constitution have parameters in there to buffer tyranny from the government, as like totalized power. So I want to know what is in that because Howard didn't read my text. I wanted to know how does the vote of no confidence work and how many people do we need to get a vote of no confidence in any existing government to, like, instead of waiting 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears because nobody cares. So these are the type of questions that I want to know because our neighbors to the north have what I call constitutional buffers. I've only read Keisha's, Lehman's, the lady from the COB, right? But I have a little brief understanding. But I want to know, is there anything in place? I know about the referendum and all that, but is there anything in place that the Bahamian people, let's say we get 60,000, 70,000 people, 50,000 people, in order to say we have a vote of no confidence in the government and they no longer exist. If that don't exist in our Constitution, then it's basically a slave master's. It's a loophole then, Professor. I don't want but I still disagree with the caller because we had learned people like A.F. Adley, Paul Adley, all these guys, they would have read it and they would have seen loopholes. But I think I'm going to listen, please.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate your telephone call. Professor, before I want to read this right here. I think it goes into what he says. He says this is a text that says the biggest lie we tell ourselves is that we have to fix the system. Probably if the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was intended to work. It wasn't designed to work for us. It is not the same system we have before independence. Only the contractors have been changed. But this train is still on the same track before 1973. We got the dependence order, but never declared our personal constitution designed for what we needed to develop into our true selves. The truth is a hard pill to swallow, and most can't get it to go down as needed. It's a text. Go on, I can let you rebut to that.
Yeah, the last caller made some good points, and the point is, I listening to all these texts, and it shows you the marriage views and ideas and opinions of people, and that's fine. The Constitution allows for that. Mr. Grant, the country has to reach the point where we have to have something to work with. That's your Constitution.
Okay.
Changes can be made to it.
Okay.
The point is, at this stage of the game, I do not believe that the Bahamian people are totally understanding of this document, which is your supreme law, and you shouldn't take it lightly. There are some very good points in that Constitution, which many of them have never read, never even understood. See, the gentleman talking about buffers against tyranny. The point is the people who you send to the House of Assembly. The problem is that those individuals believe in their party colors. They're forgetting that they are parliamentarians in the House of Assembly. So you're not going to have any change. And then the people on the outside who are the constituents, basically they have the same mindset. So how are you going to bring change like that? Let me give you a simple example. You could be working the BTC, but you go to St. Barnabas Church. You do not tell your workers at BTC to leave their church and come to St. Barnabas Church. Neither do you tell the people in St. Barnabas Church to leave their jobs, come to BTC. You have all these people with all these different views working together for what? For the cause of BTC. And they get the job done. Then pray tell me, why is it then these very same people who live in these various constituencies cannot see that they have an interest? Article 24.1 speaks to that. That's the only place in the document you have it. The very last line of that document, 24.1, where it takes the collective will of a people to bring change to a given situation. We are so weak on the ground. We allow party politics to get in the way of unifying for some very specific things at the constituency level and at the national level. Even the government of the day is politicized. You will have people call on the shows and say, well, I vote for this particular party. The party is not the government. That's the mistake people make all the time. They're making that for more than 50 years. The Constitution tells you what the government is. The Constitution tells you what the Parliament is. The Constitution tells you what the Senate is. But we ain't checking for that. We're going by these things written on scraps of paper by some different people, and it's all in confusion. Mr. Grant, we're in a confused state. And I can understand the frustration, as I experienced yesterday and even many times before then, because people have not fully understood this most valuable document, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And at this point in time now, when people are trying to learn and trying to make sense of where their country is going, you have tremendous misinformation going on. But we have to fight that, because the Constitution allows the people to express their view, and I'm not going to ever interfere with that.
Let me see if I
would listen carefully to what they have to say.
You
know what I asked myself, Howard Grant?
Go ahead.
Is it constitutionally sound? Is what they are saying constitutionally sound? Because it doesn't have any basis, if it ain't constitutionally sound.
Now, you and I are going to have several series of this. I think we did the heavy lifting today. I've identified.
No, I agree with that, because, see, I know from...
So now we could start the educational discourse. I think we did the heavy lifting today. All right,
but
let me take
I'm just simply saying that I can understand the frustration that people have.
Yeah, there is frustration.
Tremendous frustration.
There's frustration because at every inflection, as a growing young black man, as we pursue these things, I contrast my current position with what I've been told as a young boy.
Right.
I contrast, why the hell am I not doing this, and getting where I'm supposed to be, and contrast it to what my mother, grandmother, and those before me, the forefathers, have said we can do in this country. And the only point that I come to is that there must be something systematically, constitutionally awry. Let me see if I can take two of these telephone calls. Caller, you got 30 seconds.
I'm going to comment at that point when you come.
30 seconds before we can get out of here. I guess you can. 30 seconds, caller. Go ahead. That's me.
Godly day to this afternoon voice along with you and Professor.
What's up, famous?
Howard.
Hey.
We need justice, law, and order in this country. I want to say a couple of things. Number one, the people that goes in the House of Assembly, the majority of them do not want to educate the Bahamian people. Secondly, right, if the Constitution was not a Kian document, the Queen grandchildren who was here the other day, or children, would not have been able to plant something in the ocean, make it a part of the reef, okay? Because the Constitution would have made reference to for something as such not to happen in the Bahamas. Okay? so I can understand it is a canned document. And other country has the same thing. And and somebody need to tear it up and establish a constitution for the Bahamian people.
Wow, Ms. Thank you so much for your telephone call. I don't think we advocate to tear up. I don't think we advocate to tear up the thing. Let me see if I can take one more telephone call.
He just doesn't understand.
Caller, we got 30 seconds before you get out of here. Go ahead, caller.
Mr. Grant.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I'll tell you one thing. The person in the House of Assembly don't want the Constitution to work. Because if you look in the House alone, and the House of Assembly alone, they make laws, and what they do, when you try to enforce it in the House, they turn around and say it ain't irrelevant.
Wow.
So we really, like Professor says, we are the problem. All right?
Wow. Thank you, my brother. I do appreciate your telephone call. Professor, let me read one or two of these texts.
Yes,
this is Howard. The truth is an offensive, but not a sin. The truth is an offense, but it's not a sin. It said, we can't be worrying about an older generation feelings when we are fighting for a younger generation. All lies must die. We must create an environment for true self-determination and put away this neo-colonial system like the wilderness with Moses and the older generation. That's a text that actually came through. Let me see if I can read one or two more of these. It says, the United Kingdom Constitution is composed of laws and rules that create the institution of that state, regulate the relationships between those institutions, or regulate the relationship between the state and the individual. These laws and rules are not codified in a single written document, right? So this is information that's actually coming through. It says that those same people on contract, if they brought children along with them, their children should be accepted in our schools. I didn't read the first part of that text. This is, don't forget, Fred Mitchell burnt the Constitution and sent the ashes to Mr. Pilning. This is amazing stuff. Guys, I appreciate your telephone calls, your contribution. Professor, I'll let you take 3 minutes before we get out of here. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I just want to say that I listen to all these divergent views, and of course, there's tremendous misinformation out there in relation to that. And it's unfortunate that people always look for negativity and highlight the negativity. You know something we don't highlight? From 1729, September, this is my birth month, right on up to now, going to almost 300 years of parliamentary democracy, we have had peaceful changes of administrations in this country without firing one shot to change an administration. Did they tell them that at CARICOM? Did they tell them that to these international nations? See, they ain't going to talk about that, you know. Because, you see, they don't want to hear about that. But that's a part of our history, Mr. Grant. We don't accentuate that which is positive. Do you know, even as black people, we were ahead of Martin Luther King. When they were sitting around the table or trying to get around the table to go in the restaurant and you had black tap and white tap and that sort of thing, we had majority rule January 10, 1967 and 1968. Unfortunately, Martin Luther King was shot to death. We were ahead in so many areas, but we don't give ourselves any credit. We overlook these positive things that happen in our country.
You and I are going to have, I want to talk more with you. I think I'm going to come and look for you when I get some time to really be able to chomp these things down, because the revolutions that existed they didn't exist in isolation. They were not created in silos. There was global revolutions. And if we look back historically at timelines, we'd realize that the fights that we had, whether it be the Burma Road riot, whether it be women's suffrage, whether it be fights for majority rule, are simultaneous fights that happen in different pockets globally. And sometimes we tend to forget. We believe that this sort of an idea of creation stemmed with us.
Yeah, but
there was a global shift. There was the trade winds of time. There was divinity released into the minds and spirits of the Bahamian of people globally to be able to shift. And this is the shift that we actually see today. And I believe that that's happening now. Now, I really hate to do this. I tell you, I can come look for you, and forgive me for this. The time is absolutely done. It's 2 o'clock. And I really, truly enjoyed this conversation with you. And I really believe that we've started something. Like I said, we've done the heavy lifting. And now it should be an educational platform, educational campaign to empower, educate. And if there needs to be amendments, we can put that down on paper.
No,
Listen,
that's correct.
Professor.
I accept that.
Professor, I thank you so very kindly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very kindly for being able to sit with us today, to join in this conversation, to educate us, to enlighten us, and to really prepare us for the next 50 years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Foundation with Howard Grant. Thank you, Professor Sidney MacArthur and Walter Thompson, for being able to join in the conversation today. 96.9 FM radio. Guys, stick and stay for Shivago Lang with Z Live right after this. Have a beautiful day, guys. Enjoy your day. And good conversations. Continue to have these conversations around your tables and your different spaces about where we are and where we need to go. I see you tomorrow, God spare, right here on Guardian Radio 96.9. Have a great day, guys.
The foundation. Foundation. The foundation. The foundation. The foundation. The foundation. The foundation.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.